World leaders are paying tribute to former U.S. Secretary of State Henry Kissinger, who died yesterday at the age of 100. Kissinger led U.S. foreign policy through many critical moments in the 1970s. He continued to advise U.S. and foreign governments for the rest of his life. Kissinger has received the Nobel Peace Prize, but many critics call him a war criminal. For more, we're joined by Elise Labott. She is the founder and editor of Zivi Media and a professor at an American University School of International Service. Good to have you with us. So let's talk about Henry Kissinger. He was a major figure in American foreign policy, but a divisive figure. Why was he so polarizing?
Well, Lana, I think not only was he a very big figure, and if you look at some of the big figures in U.S. diplomacy, that's always polarizing. But I think it's mostly because while he was, credited with this opening to China of President Nixon, and certainly helping end the Yom Kippur War with Israel and really coined shuttle diplomacy, he was also seen as being very secretive with President Nixon, and also he was accused of kind of this hard realism, which is really thinking about U.S. interests over its values sometimes, such as human rights, when he was working on Vietnam and the bombing of Cambodia, which ultimately led, for instance, to the Khmer Rouge coming over and coming into power, and which led to the slaughter of millions of people. Or then in Chile, when they allowed for the coup by General Pinochet, and then human rights were very horrible in Chile for a long time. And so while Dr. Kissinger would say that he was always putting U.S. interests first, it was really this hard, cold realism that a lot of people thought, were at the expense of U.S. values such as human rights.
So Kissinger was most closely associated with Nixon in the 1970s, but he was still actively involved, meeting with world leaders, even just months before his death. What lasting elements of influence do we see in the world, and how other nations view the U.S. today because of Kissinger?
Well, I mean, Lana, I'll just say that when anybody thinks of kind of the big thinkers in U.S. foreign policy, they always look at someone like Dr. Kissinger. And so it's really interesting that, nowadays diplomacy is very transactional. But I think most people look back to him as this kind of strategic thinker that saw the world, that saw the chessboard. And the idea, as you said, that he was working well into, his 90s. I saw Dr. Kissinger just days before the October 7th Hamas attacks at a conference on the Yom Kippur War. And his memory was as crisp on what happened during those weeks as if it were yesterday. And into his 90s, he was still writing, he was still thinking. He wrote a book on AI and was one of the first people to talk about, the promise and the peril of artificial intelligence. And I think when people think of him, they don't only think of someone in shuttle diplomacy and this kind of big figure, but someone that thought very strategically about the world and that chessboard. And I think that's really his lasting legacy, along with, some of the things that he was very, reviled around a lot of people in the United States, I would say.
It's very interesting, Elise, because a Harvard student once posed a question to him about that complicated legacy, those questions of war crimes versus Nobel Peace Prize winner, and he responded with that question about seeing the overall strategy, the chessboard. Elise Labott, thank you.
Yeah.